Hey guys, and welcome to another Schematics update. This time we want to talk about Age of Wonders Planetfall. Gameplay was just shown on stream from Paradox, and to talk about Age of Wonders Planetfall, I'm joined by Blind.
Hi, resident Age of Wonders fanboy here, reporting for duty.
So that's why you're here, and
Yep.
Age of Wonders is in the future now.
So Age of Wonders traditionally for the past 3 installments of the franchise have all been like fantasy, high fantasy.
Yeah.
As announced back at PDXCon, was that this year? I guess that was this year, jeez.
It was this year, yeah.
It was announced as a science fiction game, which was kind of mixed results, I think, at least from the response I saw. Some people were like, yay, and some people are more like, another science fiction game?
That's me.
Let's just get right into the gameplay here.
Sure.
My initial feeling is there is still a lot of Age of Wonders here. As somebody who's liked this franchise for a while, I remember playing Age of Wonders 1 and Age of Wonders 2 very closely, and I think I missed the third one completely. There's still definitely the DNA from those older games, and that has me very hopeful.
Yeah, I can totally see what you're saying. For me, I have mixed feelings. I'm pretty sure I played one of the installments of the series back in the days. I looked back at old screenshots from 1 and 2, and they look familiar to me. But the thing for me is it just has some Civ vibes to me, because I really loved the older Civ installments, and then there was the future installment. What was it called again? Beyond Earth, I think. And I played it and I really disliked it, not because it was in the future, but future text, that's way too complicated for me, and fancy names, and I didn't know shit. And I have some sort of like the same feeling here.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like in the first installments you had an idea what you're doing somehow, and now it's just made up future stuff.
You like this type of game to kind of be based in not necessarily reality, but something that you can understand more? Does that make sense? Instead of just made up technology?
Yes and no. Yes, I like it more based in reality, in air quotes, but I think it's just, we had so many future games now in this genre. I kind of feel like it's 5 years back when everybody complained about shooters, every shooter being in sci-fi setting, and it's just a flashback. I like sci-fi, don't get me wrong.
All I know is a science fiction setting definitely allows for a very wide sprawling of different kinds of units, just because you know, the franchise is all about almost unit collection, and by endgame you have a ton of different units that you have at your disposal, and I do see that as like something that could be very interesting. Just talking about the look of the game, let's talk about the UI for a split second here. The UI, in my opinion, is actually very big and almost over stylized, especially the unit bar down at the bottom. I really wish that was a little bit more condensed, and same with the mini map. I think that it's far bigger than it needs to be. As far as the top half of the UI goes, I know you mentioned that it reminds you of Stellaris before we started recording. To me, it just looks like any 4X strategy game, which is fine. The top half is fine, but I think the bottom half is a little bit over stylized, and I wish it was a little bit more either smaller or laid back in a way.
You're totally right. Before we started recording, we talked a little bit about UI, and all 4X games basically have the same UI. From the information standpoint, what needs to be displayed there. In this case, the general style or art style of the game reminds me quite a lot of Stellaris, and maybe that's just why the UI, at least the top half of the UI, reminds me totally of Stellaris. I would even go that far and say switch them out and you had all the informations you need. Bottom half, yeah, I agree. I think your avatar a little bit big. And I think like how the minimap is displayed, it doesn't really fit the art style. At least right now. Maybe they tweak that in the future.
Maybe that depends on faction as well. It's kind of hard to say. So let's move on a little bit. Let's move on to the manual combat. As a staple of the franchise, Age of Wonders has the grid-based combat with cover system, and it's almost XCOM-like. And there's fully destructible environments, and at least the older games had a variety of different scenarios, things like sieges and various events that I look back on very fondly. So I guess I'm just wondering, Adfo, what was your impressions of the combat like? What did you think of it?
I would describe it as XCOM light. Let's talk about this before I dive into how I feel or how I think the combat is, because you can auto combat and you can manual combat, right? And for me, giving me the choice and what I have seen from the manual combat, I think I'd press auto combat each and every time, because yeah, it looks kind of interesting, but at least for me right now, from what we have seen, and yes, it's so super early, so who knows how it will work out in the end. And when you have more text, maybe it gets more tactical, but right now it looks very shallow to me.
It does look kind of on the basic side currently, at least what we've seen.
Exactly, and I don't really want to put the time into it if I can play it on auto combat, if it's that shallow. If it was deep and challenging, yes, totally for manual combat. But maybe that's just the impression, because I mean, what we saw like from the combat is super early in the game.
I think the combat has the potential to be really deep and interesting, especially the way they were talking about various resistances to certain weapon types and stuff that you might want to do yourself instead of letting the AI handle. I do remember hitting the auto combat button a lot in the older games, but at the same time, when you got down to the big battles that really mattered, where they had the unit number advantage or they had more powerful, more upgraded units, and you're like, okay, I have to do this myself to make sure that things go well.
Yeah.
I do remember those fights being very tense, and if it's anything like the older games, I think that they will be compelling, at least in late game. I can certainly see early game battles being shallow and uninteresting. That's kind of my impressions, really. I would like to see more. I think this is a little bit early to really place judgment on it.
Totally agree.
I think we can just move on to like just our general impressions of the visuals. Admittedly, we have seen some screenshots in the past, but what do you think of the game visually, just like the world and the unit design?
I know that at least 3 people in the comments, let's say 10 people in the comments will hate me for saying this, but the overall map looks super beyond Earth to me. In general, I like the art style, and the graphics are crisp and they look nice, so that's a plus. I don't know, I think it's missing a little bit of its own identity right now. Maybe that's my biggest complaint about it. What we saw from the art style, or at least the visuals, it looks good, at least in combat. Destructible environment looked good. I'm okay with it.
For me personally, I wouldn't compare it to Beyond Earth, just because Beyond Earth just looks like Civ, right? So it's much more hex based. This is more looks like an actual world to me. Like the scale of things like mountains are significantly larger, and I really like the look of the giant plant growth that they show off.
Yeah.
Which is like a sentient plant. I think the cities look very sprawling and cool. I really like the way the roads are laid out. They're just kind of satisfying to look at. One thing I will say, though, is I think the game looks a little washed out, and I'm not sure why. I think it's like they've almost got a color filter over it, and it's muting the colors in a way.
Yeah, it looks desaturated. It could use a little bit more contrast, in my opinion, and the colors could pop a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I think that's maybe personal taste. What I saw, at least when you click on like interest or points of interest, like cities, you have like the overlay with a circle over it that has some sort of like, or indicates that it's targeted, and that even desaturated the map even more. And I totally didn't like it, because on the edge of the map the colors pop a little bit more because it's darkened down, but the center, which should be the focus point, it looks washed out. I agree.
And they did mention briefly during the stream that there will be mod support, but it's a Paradox game, so that's kind of it comes with the territory. And I guess like the last topic we have in this doc here is release date ? When do you think this is going to be coming out? They have it slated as 2019 right now, so next year. But when next year, do you think? Looking
back at Paradox and when they start showing their titles, for example, Stellaris and Surviving Mars, they all showed the first gameplay like half a year before release, and I could totally see that.
I mean, this looks...
So I'm guessing, let me do the math, summer.
Like, I think they're gonna slate it for summer and then maybe push it back into Q3.
Or maybe do something like Surviving Mars did and roll out a free content pack relatively quickly after launch.
Yeah.
I could see that too, just to keep the release date. First of all, thanks Blind for watching the stream and talking about Age of Wonders Planetfall with me. Thanks to you guys out there for watching the video, and let us know in the comment section what you think about the first gameplay we have seen. Do you like it? Do you like the art style? Give us your thoughts, and if you liked the video, smash the like button. If you really liked the video, you may want to consider heading over to Coffee to buy the editor, in this case my grandma, a coffee so she can stay up all night, edit this video just for you. Anyway, thanks for watching again. See you next time. Bye.
Your grandmother? What?
Yep.